Good morning, everybody. We're going to get started in just a moment. I am going to actually unshare my screen briefly to make sure we can go live on Facebook, and then we'll come right back and get going. Welcome, everybody. All right. Going live. Be ready in just a moment. Happy Friday, everyone. Okay, we are live on Facebook. Excellent. Now, I'm going to get started in just a moment. Thanks for being here, everybody. Just going to give folks another minute or two. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome. Thanks so much for being here. This event is one of 13 sessions in our Financial Beginnings virtual speaker series to celebrate Financial Literacy Month. My name is Kate Benedict, and I'm the Executive Director of Financial Beginnings Oregon. And before I introduce our amazing speakers, I just want to take a moment to share who we are and thank our sponsors and, just welcome all of you again. I'm so glad to have you all here. So, Financial Beginnings Oregon, Washington, California, and Nebraska. We exist to provide free financial education to communities across our states. Our programs are free for all ages, and they're all taught by trained volunteers. So if you're interested in learning more about Financial Beginnings, you can check us out online, financialbeginnings.org. We'd love to have you involved as a volunteer or to bring our financial literacy programs to your community through your school or your nonprofit. So check us out online. I'd love to thank our sponsors and then introduce our speakers. Oops, there we go. Thank you so much to all of our sponsors, but especially to our presenting sponsor, Bank of America, for making this series possible. Huge thank you. We couldn't have done this without you. And to all of our sponsors, this event is just such a celebration for us of financial literacy, and the whole month of April is jam-packed with sessions. So thank you to all of our sponsors for making this happen. Our impact sponsor is On Point Community Credit Union. We've got BECU, the Division of Financial Regulation, Department of Consumer and Business Services. Craig and Carla are both from there, so huge thank you to them both. PNC Bank, FP Transitions, Northwest Credit Union Foundation, State Farm, US Bank, Citizens Bank, and FNBO, the First National Bank of Omaha. Huge thank you for helping us put on this event. And before we introduce today's session, I just wanted to plug two more sessions that are happening next week that you don't want to miss. The first is a session with some of our expert financial education facilitators. They're going to tell all tips and tricks from the experts on bringing financial literacy to your community. That's on Tuesday, the 19th at 1 p.m. I'll put registration link in the chat so folks can register if they'd like. And then on Thursday, the 21st, we have Breaking Down the Chain, Blockchain, Cryptocurrencies, and Tokens Explained. Goes way over my head. I'm excited to join and learn a thing or two and hope to see you all there. I will put the link in the chat. And now, oops, there we go. Oh my gosh, sorry, wrong way. Here we go. Today's session, Carla and Craig from the Division of Financial Regulation, Department of Consumer and Business Services. We are so glad to have you here. They're not only sponsoring this event, but are bringing this hugely important topic to us. I know for so many of us feels really front of mind. I personally have asked my spouse to take copious notes during this session because I'll be participating and I really want him to be learning all the things. So thank you so much to Carla Martinez and Craig Badiat for being here today. And go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Kate. All right, so I'll go ahead and kick us off. As we're gearing up for, potential, wildfire season and summer, and, just navigating, through any potential disasters. Our class today is about disaster preparedness. And so it's a roadmap to protecting your family and your wallet. So today we have myself, Carla Martinez, the Consumer Liaison for the Division of Financial Regulation, and my colleague, Craig Badiat, Financial Education Outreach Coordinator, who will be presenting. And so we're going to kind of split up the presentation this morning. So I'll kind of kick us off and then I'll hand it over to him. We will be taking or try to take questions at the end. And please, if you have a question, make sure you jot that down in the chat. We also do have a PDF form that you will may be useful to you with additional resources and links that you can access. And this is information that will be provided in the presentation as well. So I hope you enjoy and I hope this is useful information, and we'll go ahead and get started.
Carla, can you see the slideshow showing up?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you. So we are the Oregon Division of Financial Regulation, and we are part of the Department of Consumer and Business Services. So there's a multitude of different agencies within DCBS, as well as OSHA and Building Codes Division, Workers' Comp Division. And so we're part of that big kind of umbrella agency. Our mission is protecting Oregonians' access to fair products and services through education, regulation, and consumer assistance. The division protects consumers and regulates insurance, depository institutions, trust companies, securities, and consumer financial products and services. We regulate business in these industries by doing things such as conducting exams and investigations and taking enforcement action when necessary. Next slide. Thank you. Kind of the highlight and really kind of my favorite part of our division is our consumer advocacy section. We have a team of consumer advocates who are experts in insurance and financial products who can help you with problems, questions, concerns, or contract issues pertaining to either insurance or financial services. If you're not sure if a complaint is the way to go, you can always give our office a call and ask general questions, or you can even email us as well, and we'll be happy to assist. You can find out also if your insurance agent is licensed or any other financial professional in Oregon by visiting our website or calling one of our advocates. Please let your community members know about us. We're very, this is part of our job, is to do a lot of consumer awareness. A lot of folks do not know that our office exists and that our resources and services are free. I know that there's going to be several folks probably in this webinar who are not Oregon residents. So just please make note that the information provided here today is, some of it may be Oregon specific, such as the insurance, pertaining to the insurance, and then some of the other stuff just can be generally applied anywhere. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it off to Craig now. And I, again, just really appreciate everyone who's joining us today. And I hope this information is useful.
Craig, you are muted. Sorry about that, Craig.
That's okay. Thank you. As Carla mentioned, we are from the Oregon Division of Financial Regulation, and we understand that folks are here from different states, but disasters affect all of us, no matter where we live. Regarding Oregon's, specific disasters, our geography and our climate make us susceptible to a range of threats. And we know that over the last few years, the risk of wildfire has increased, and will continue to impact the state because of the effects of climate change. We also know that scientists have warned about the big one, a potential 9.0 plus magnitude earthquake caused by the Cascadia subduction zone, which is off the coast of Oregon and off the coast of Washington and California. And that could impact the entire region. And so today's presentation is going to focus on really how to be insurance ready, but also how to prepare practically as well as financially. So we're going to focus on that insurance piece because, in the event of a disaster, that's really going to be the tool that helps everyone to recover. So it's important that you have the right insurance and also the right coverage limits to make sure you're adequately protected. So, the first question is, are you protected? It's really important to know what your policy covers and what's not covered by your insurance policy, just as important. Now, thankfully, most disasters are covered by our typical homeowners policies, and that includes wildfire, smoke, windstorm, hail, lightning, freezing, accidental and sudden rupturing of plumbing, the weight of ice and snow, even volcanic eruption, falling trees, and explosion. That's kind of just an example of what is covered by our typical homeowners policies. However, there are threats or perils, as they're called, that might not be covered by your standard policy. And so that includes earthquake, tsunami, landslide, mud flow, flood, acts of terrorism or war, and then other perils not specifically excluded by your policy. And so a few notes about that. The good news is that excluded events or excluded perils can be covered by what's called a difference in condition policy. And that can kind of offer an all-in-one coverage for things like landslides, earthquakes, floods. But they have to be specifically listed within your difference in conditions policy. And so you're going to want to make sure when you talk to an insurance agent, you're kind of listing those specific perils. You can also buy flood insurance just kind of as a standalone. And the FEMA National Flood Insurance Program is a resource you can use to purchase flood insurance. Then you can also purchase earthquake insurance. So a standalone earthquake insurance policy to protect against that hazard. So one of our big points today is to make sure that you talk to your agent or your company regarding the excluded events that you're concerned about, and then purchasing the insurance that will provide coverage against that threat. Now in Oregon, over the last few years, and I know this is also true along the West Coast for Washington, California, that the fire season has impacted a lot of communities, right? That people have had to deal with the aftermath of fire and then the recovery process. Oregon DFR has really worked hard to support those consumers. DFR has also worked to influence the policies around the state. So working to protect consumers through laws or just cooperation with insurance companies. And, and while this is a very challenging time for folks, especially those who have had to deal with the results of this, we have been able to help consumers to be prepared, to be more resilient, and also to reduce risk. And so we want to encourage people to use the opportunity today to prepare, right? That's why we have this opportunity to be ready. And so we want to encourage people to do that, to be prepared, and to not find yourself in a place of regret, wishing that you would have done more. And so the key learnings you can see on the slide here, a lot of folks found themselves underinsured or just simply not covered for the losses that they endured. People didn't have a home inventory prepared, which really slowed down the claims process. People didn't really understand how to access their coverage, weren't aware that there were certain benefits that they had available. And so that's another learning. In Oregon, we have consumer advocates, as Carla mentioned. And so a lot of folks didn't know to access consumer advocates. We want to make sure people know that we're here to help. And then that general kind of regret of not being as prepared as they wanted to be. So we put together kind of a playlist, you know, a plan that you can implement. It's both knowledge and actions that you can take to be more prepared. And so here's that list. We want to make sure that people understand that, you know, disaster can happen to you. To assess and mitigate the risk where you live. To understand your insurance coverage. We'll talk about that. We'll break that down. We'll talk about how to create that home inventory. How to create not only your emergency toolkit, but also a financial backpack, having those financial documents and important paperwork that will help you to work on the recovery process. And then lastly, if you face disaster, making sure you understand how to go through the claims process, you know, how to navigate that, and then get help if you need it. So we're going to go through each of those, kind of break it down, and we want to encourage you to put questions in the chat. We'll answer those throughout, at least at the end of the session today. So the first is just to really recognize that disaster can happen to you. We want to encourage people not to succumb to normalcy bias. Some people might call it the ostrich effect, which is, you know, a state where we disbelieve or we minimize the threat warnings that we face. We have a tendency to kind of expect things to continue to be as they are. And even though the last couple of years haven't been normal by any means, we might not, you know, think about earthquake really affecting us. We know it's a possibility, but really kind of recognizing that the threat is real, especially in Oregon, Washington, or California, and then taking the time to prepare. We might underestimate both the likelihood that something might happen, and then also the severity of the loss, the effect of the event on our lives and our property. And so this, you know, this kind of normalcy bias causes people not to prepare. We know the risks are real. We've seen disasters occurring more frequently around us. And so again, we have this opportunity. We really want to encourage people to take advantage of the opportunity and to prepare. And one of the key pieces for preparation is recognizing that insurance really is the financial tool to help us be most ready. And so kind of moving on to thinking about, you know, what are the risks that you face where you live? They're going to be different, right? If you're on the coast, you might face the threat of tsunami. If you are in a kind of the wildland urban interface, kind of in a, you know, in a place where there's a lot of trees and vegetation, maybe it's dry, you might be at risk of wildfire. So think about the risks that you face, and then think about the steps that you could take to mitigate, to reduce the risks that you're exposed to. There's lots of ways you can do this. You can see on the slide, you know, you can inspect and trim trees that are close to your home. You can also create what's called defensible space. It's clearing vegetation around your home so that there are fewer fuels, there are fewer combustible items. That might also include, you know, clearing leaves. And another piece is to think about putting screens over vents around your home so that embers, in the event of a wildfire, can't enter and start a fire within your home. If you're concerned about earthquakes, then taking a look at seismic retrofitting of your home, how you can attach, you know, your foundation to your home to prevent damage. And then doing things like inspecting your roof or your gutters, making sure that your home is in good condition. And some of that work can be really technical and potentially dangerous. So you want to make sure that you seek out professionals to help you with that work when it's appropriate. So moving on, we want to really focus again on reviewing and understanding your insurance coverage. In 2020 and 2021, a lot of people were underinsured, right? They didn't have enough coverage. Okay, they weren't protected to the level they needed to be, and then they also maybe didn't have coverage at all, depending on their losses. And so the declarations page of your insurance policy is going to explain the kind of coverage you have and also the dollar limits, the level of protection that you've purchased. It's also going to include your deductibles and how your claim might be paid. And so here's kind of the action is to talk to your insurance company or your insurance agent to review your coverage levels. Especially anytime you have a big change around your home, maybe you make an addition, maybe you renovate, your bathroom, maybe you build a shop. Those types of things are really going to be important for you to talk about with your insurance agent or company. Some other factors that might leave you underinsured, the price of materials might be a factor. If there's high demand because maybe a disaster affected the larger community, then maybe labor is going to be in shortage. And so that might also increase the cost to rebuild. Another thing to keep in mind around underinsurance is making sure that your personal possessions are covered. There are often what are limits for personal possessions. So things like jewelry, perhaps, or a gun collection, let's say, electronic equipment. Those are all going to have limits on them, and so anything of value that goes beyond that limit won't be covered. And so that might be an opportunity for you to talk with your agent about adding what's called an endorsement, which would raise the limits and protect you for those personal items that go above that limit. Really important note also about renters. If you are a renter, you want to be protected with renter's insurance. It's going to do a lot of the same things as your homeowner's policy would. It's going to protect your personal belongings. It's also going to provide you with what's called additional living expenses, so that if your apartment or your rental you were not able to live in it, let's say because you were evacuated or maybe it was damaged by disaster, then that can help to pay for things like hotel stays or restaurant meals, costs that would go above and beyond your normal living expenses. So an important consideration there. So let's break down real quickly the different types of coverages you have within your standard homeowner's policy. And we just want to mention that, the part of your coverage that protects the structure, your home, is what's called coverage A. And so if your home were damaged, coverage A is going to take care of the rebuilding, the repair of your home. There's going to be a limit to that coverage. And so you're going to want to make sure that you talk with your agent or your insurance company to make sure that you're covered to the extent that you really need to be. You can ask your agent to do kind of a total replacement cost assessment to talk about, here are the things that I want to make sure are protected. Do I have adequate coverage? A real quick note about manufactured homes. One of the important learnings from 2020 and 2021 wildfires is that people that have manufactured homes are protected with what's called actual cash value coverage, meaning it considers the depreciation that's occurred on the manufactured home. And so a lot of folks who had this insurance coverage were not able to provide a replacement for their manufactured home. They were only given the amount that was the depreciated value. And so you want to talk to your insurance company or agent if you have a manufactured home to make sure that you're adequately covered in that case as well. And then also on this slide, you can see other structures, which is called coverage B. And so that's going to cover things like your fences, decks, detached garages, things that are detached structures from your property. And there's going to be a coverage limit on those as well. Usually it's a percentage of your structure, your dwelling coverage. And so, you want to talk to your agent there to make sure that you've considered those items and make sure you're protected. So coverage C covers your personal property and the contents. You want to make sure that you have enough coverage there to protect those personal possessions. This is where a home inventory is going to be really helpful because it'll help you to account for those things and the values. If you have things of significant value, again, you're going to want to talk about adding an endorsement. So increasing the limit for that coverage to make sure those things are protected. And then the last one we'll talk about is additional living expenses. I mentioned this earlier. It's a really important benefit within your insurance policy. And it will cover costs, again, associated with not being able to be in your house in the event of disaster. So that, again, that might be for hotel stays, it might be restaurant bills, car rentals, anything that goes above and beyond what your normal expenses would have been had you been able to, stay in your home. It also protects folks when you have a level 3 evacuation order. And so that coverage kicks in and you have access to that benefit to pay for those expenses. So you're going to want to make sure that you keep track of all of your receipts if you are evacuated or if you're out of your home because of the disaster. Yeah, thanks, Thomas. We'll talk about the home inventory coming up right next, so we'll get right there. All right. A few other things about your coverage to keep in mind. You will have a part of your coverage that addresses debris removal in the case of a disaster. And so you want to make sure how much you'll be covered for there. Typically, it's a stated dollar amount for that debris removal. So it's going to be a very clear dollar amount, the protection that you have there. Check to see what that is in your case. It's also going to detail how much time you have to rebuild. In the case of the 2020 Labor Day fires in Oregon DFR was able to work with insurance companies and come to an agreement to allow folks to rebuild over a 2-year period. But typically it's a year. And so just make sure that you're checking about the rebuild time that you might have available with your insurance company. And then most of the time you're required to rebuild on the same location if your home were damaged and needed to be rebuilt. Again, the Division of Financial Regulation worked with insurance companies to kind of negotiate that and provide people with the ability to rebuild in a different location. But that's going to depend on your state, and it's not a guarantee. So again, check with your own policy. So there's some things regarding your policy that you want to make sure you understand. You want to make sure that you review on an annual basis with your insurance company. And so let's transition and look at some of the more practical things that you can do to prepare, including creating a home inventory. So creating your home inventory is going to help reduce your stress, and it's also going to help you in the result as a result of having to file a claim and recovering the value of those items. Excuse me. There are a lot of home inventory apps available. We have a link on our website that you can access to go to the iOS store for Apple, as well as the Google Play Store. And we're not going to provide an example of a specific one, but there are going to be a lot of options there for you to look at. You can also check with your insurance company. They'll likely have a form available for you to use. They might have an app. We also have a how-to. We have a video and some other helpful information about how to build a home inventory on our website, which is dfr.oregon.gov. The simplest way to build a home inventory is just to use your phone. Use your phone and either capture video or photos going around your house, including your garage, your shed, and just taking the time to snap a photo or just video your room. If you have the opportunity to take a look at serial numbers or model numbers, do that as well. Another note here is to maybe start saving receipts for large purchases that you make. Maybe you can take a photo of the receipt as well. And that way you're kind of inventorying your bigger purchases as you go along. All right. Just one last reminder there, make sure that you're keeping your home inventory in a secure place. If you're keeping it in the cloud, that's going to be a secure place for you to keep it, right? If you have a paper inventory and you're affected by disaster, then you might lose that, which is not going to help you very much. All right, so let's move on to, again, another practical piece, which is that emergency kit. Many of us might have that as the first piece of preparedness work that we've done, which is great. What you can do is check your emergency kit. Take a look at what you do have in there. Is it enough? Does it cover all of the essentials that you might need? There are a couple of great resources for putting together your emergency kit, including the American Red Cross has a great guide to building your kit. Ready.gov, which is a FEMA resource, also has a wonderful list for you to put together that emergency kit in your go bag. What's overlooked often is not only having those essentials ready, but also having the financial information ready. We want to make sure that along with our emergency kit, we want to have that kit of financial records so that not only do we have the essentials to we have water, we have our toothbrush, we have some extra cash, but we also have those documents that are really going to be important in the recovery process. And so this is what we like to call our financial backpack. It's kind of like our emergency kit, but here we have things like our driver's licenses, our passports, social security card, things like your birth certificate, insurance policies, tax records, loan or mortgage docs, title and registration for things like your car, maybe a boat or an RV. And so think about the financial components of your life and make sure that you have those resources put together in a safe space as well. Again, you can make copies of those things to kind of reduce paperwork and keep those electronically. We also have a checklist on our website in order to help you to put together your financial backpack. All right, and I think we're going to hand it off over to Carla to help us understand what to do following disaster.
Thanks, Craig. All right, so this part is really important as well. How to respond or what to do after the disaster's already happened. It does take time and quite a bit of patience, and people go through kind of different stages during that period of time of recovery. You go through the initial shock, you go through after, then you have the emotional kind of roller coaster stage. You have the, adrenaline of kind of trying to get things back on track. But these are some things you can do to potentially help you kind of in that recovery process. one of the things to consider initially is to do kind of a cost benefit analysis before filing a claim. If you haven't experienced a partial or total loss, the significant of a loss after a disaster, can impact your policy, can impact your rates. So having a conversation with your agent or company about, what would that potentially look like? Consider your deductible as well when making a decision and reporting a claim. And then really also, how can that claim affect your future premium and your future availability to be able to get coverage? So having those discussions and just kind of keeping those things in mind, when you do sustain a loss, even if it's, smoke damage, for example, or something that isn't really going to be considered a partial or total loss. If you have your financial backpack ready, you should have a copy of your policy, including your policy of your declarations page. I know a lot of times, companies offer, access to your coverage over your phone. You can download an app and you can access that information that way as well. So making sure that, if you have the availability to access that information through an app, that would be a good idea as well. And then, of course, contacting your insurance company to get started on your claim. So taking reasonable steps to prevent further damage or theft. So mitigating your damages. There's also a section in your policy that can provide you some kind guidance around what is your responsibility to mitigate that damage. Don't rush into repairs or rebuilding before getting instructions from your insurance adjuster. Make sure you take pictures, save all your receipts, and don't throw away anything. Also, if you must find lodging, due to an evacuation, make sure you keep your records and receipts of all of the costs that you incurred. Now, additional living expenses, as Craig mentioned, is additional costs above and beyond what your normal cost would have been. So, making sure you're taking that into consideration as well. And if you don't have an inventory of your home, begin to build one from memory. So finding photos, maybe in your gallery, in your phone, if you've had highlighted, pictures with maybe jewelry, as Craig mentioned, has special items, maybe paying close attention to those. And then next slide. So your insurance company, will respond, typically will have certain things that you'll want to kind of keep in mind when you're working with your insurance carrier. Your insurance company may send out an insurance adjuster to kind of assess the damage. I think, because of COVID precautions, a lot of insurance companies really haven't been sending people out into the field. They're doing a lot of things virtual or electronic, or even through, the company, mitigation company or contractor. But there will be an assessment of damage. Your insurance company may recommend a mitigation company or a contractor. Do your research to determine whether the benefits of using a company that is referred by your insurance company versus selecting your own. There are pros and cons to each, so making sure that you kind of do your homework around that. You may be able to make actual cash value. They may be able to make kind of advanced payments to you, such as actual cash value payments towards your personal content, or provide emergency money under your additional living expense coverage. They also may issue payments to you, both in your name and your lender's name if you have a mortgage. So maybe keep in mind, ahead of time, kind of what that process would potentially look like by contacting your mortgage company. Don't feel rushed or pushed to agree on a settlement. If there are disagreements, try to resolve them with your insurance company. You can also refer to your policies section that talks about dispute resolution for additional information about your rights. And if you continue to have concerns on how your claim is being handled, you can always contact our advocates at our toll-free number that was listed in the slide, and we'll be able to provide that information at the end as well. And keep in mind, there are timeframes for all aspects of the claim. Make sure you have written, documented, logged conversations so that if there was a problem to occur, you have that documentation. And then also just really quickly, one really important matter is if you have an issue and you can tell that maybe your claim isn't going in the right direction, contact our advocates right away. Don't wait till the very end until maybe you're down to the last month, before your rebuild agreement is about to expire, or there's some certain time limits. So don't wait until the end to contact our office. There is a process, formal process that our advocates have to work through, and our complaints can take anywhere between 45 to 60 days to review, or potentially longer depending on if there are complications. So making sure that you contact our office kind of right away if you start to feel or notice that there are issues. So getting help and avoiding scams is kind of a big, it's a big thing to also keep in mind and be aware of. A lot of times after a disaster happens, there's folks that kind of go walk around the neighborhood, knocking on people's door, visiting people's disaster sites, offering help. This could be in the form of a contractor who's maybe not licensed or out of state. It could be someone, some sort of imposter who's pretending to be someone from your insurance company. They're all forms of different types of fraud and scams that happen to victims. We did publish a disaster scam booklet to kind of help guide people, give them information to folks about how to kind of keep aware and be kind of vigilant about that. And Craig had shared a PDF form with those links on there as well. But just a really quick note too about, after you've experienced a disaster and you're getting help, there are things such as called a public adjuster. And a public adjuster can help you navigate the claim, but they are paid to do so, and they are not paid by your insurance company. So this is an independent adjuster who you would have to hire, and payments usually would be paid out of the proceeds of your insurance benefit. So making sure that, if you do decide to maybe hire a public adjuster, a good idea might be to contact our office and kind of get more information about whether that public adjuster is licensed in Oregon, making sure that they are. And you definitely always want to make sure you're working with licensed professionals. You can also visit our website and look up their license as well, but making sure that you're getting that information from them from the beginning. Know who you're working with. So making sure that you're asking for identification from whoever it is that is coming to your site, offering help, making sure that the people that you're working with. And then fraudsters, they just generally take advantage of chaos following a fire. So making sure that you're choosing a licensed contractor, and the CCB has great information on their website on how to make sure you choose a licensed contractor. And then also that guide that we are promoting in our, that PDF that Craig sent out in the chat will also give you some good information on there as well. So some tips for the settlement process. As I mentioned, people go through different stages throughout their claim process. Could be an emotional roller coaster for most folks. And so having these tips handy may help you kind of ease some of that stress and anxiety when dealing with your insurance company. So, number one, talk to your agent and ask for help, and, have them guide you kind of through that process, and help you understand, what your policy details are. That's going to be very, very important. And use them kind of as a tutor or just an information resource to know what your policy details are and what your rights are. And when something doesn't sound right, ask questions, ask your adjuster, ask your insurance company, and you can always ask them to refer you in what policy section they're, if they're making a determination, you can always ask them to refer you to your policy for more information. And if you're facing increased costs, look to the policy to see if you have extra replacement cost coverage. Typically, your policy will include kind of a buffer for an additional replacement cost coverage. There also is a likelihood that you'll experience different claim adjusters during the life of the claim. Sometimes, the claim can be moved from one section to another. Typically with kind of, disaster catastrophic claims, they kind of move them to different units depending on states and who's all been affected. So don't be surprised, if you do get more than one claim adjuster, but always keep track of your conversations and making sure you're documenting those conversations and agreements. And if you have to file a complaint with our office, our advocates can have more leverage if you have good notes, good email correspondences and documentation of the conversations, and staying organized. Definitely be assertive, but don't lose your temper or don't say things you'll regret. And have a positive attitude and focus on a resolution. Again, I think we really want to mention that if you run into snags or you run into situations where that you're probably not going to get somewhere with your insurance company, definitely contact our advocates and do that kind of in a timely fashion so that we can get the help that you need, or even just get it to the point where there's kind of your claim is moving along forward. And during the claims and settlement, if you run into some problems, again, contact your insurance company, contact your insurance agent, making sure that documentation is well noted. Again, contacting our office earlier on if you run into some problems that may take a while to get a resolution. Our complaint process, again, takes anywhere between 45 to 60 days to resolve. So the earlier you contact our office, kind of the better, the more time it'll give the advocate to kind of help navigate through that, through those issues. And our team can provide accurate, up-to-date, Oregon-specific, information. And we work directly with you and your insurance company free of charge. And we can, just let us see how we can help before you take any legal action. And before you hire professionals, contact us, whether that be a public adjuster or even an attorney. You can always give our office a call. We do not provide any legal advice. Our advocates are not attorneys and they are not able to provide any legal advice, but they can certainly, they're experts, they're industry experts, so they can help guide you through those issues and help you kind of navigate towards a resolution. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it back over to Craig and to finish this off here. Thank you.
It looks like, thank you, Carla. It looks like we have a question too from Steve in the chat that we can get to. We just wanted to mention again that we've put together not only a list here of resources that might be helpful, but also want to make sure that everybody saw the resource PDF that we put in the chat earlier. It is titled DFR Disaster Preparedness Resource Links. And that has a number of different resources specifically from the Oregon Division of Financial Regulation. And so on that, we have a link to our consumer advocate kind of resources. We have that disaster preparedness checklist. We have videos on how to build your home inventory. And so there's a lot of resources there. We also have, as Carla mentioned, the guide to purchasing renter's insurance. We have web pages specifically for homeowners insurance, for earthquake insurance, for flood insurance. And then we also included a number of external resources, resources from FEMA, from the National Fire Protection Association, which is putting together wildfire preparedness, Community Wildfire Preparedness Day on May 7th. So this is a great opportunity for folks to either at their home or in their communities take action to prepare for wildfire specifically. So please take a look at that resource link. Yeah, we'll get that reposted and make sure that everybody has access to that.
Craig, it looks like it was posted, but it just went to hosts and panelists. So if we just make sure to select everyone, it'll get everybody.
I will take care of that. Thank you. I'll make sure that gets out right now. Okay. So
there it is.
thank you, Kate. Appreciate that. All right. So to finish up today, just another reminder that, for Oregon consumers, we have a team of consumer advocates to help answer insurance questions. Also, we have a team of financial services advocates who can help with other financial service questions related to banking or credit unions or mortgages. And then our resources are available at dfr.oregon.gov. Carla and I are financial educators, and so we're available to present on a different range of topics. We'll also go out and respond when there is a disaster in the state. We'll help people. We'll go to communities and help provide information to help them understand their rights and also how to access resources. So we just want to say thanks for the opportunity to share about disaster preparedness. And we might have a few minutes to take questions before we wrap up today.
Well, wonderful. Thank you so much, Carla and Craig. It looks like there was one question that was answered in the chat, but I'm going to repeat it for folks. The question was, you've said during a recovery process from a disaster to talk with your agent. What if they're not available for some reason due to the disaster? Who to contact? The actual insurance company? And Carla, your answer was so helpful around, typically you'll be assigned a claim adjuster or a team of claim representatives from the insurance company, and those folks would be good to contact as well. Anything to add on that one?
I think if your agent isn't available, most insurance companies will have a toll-free number and for claims. And so that's another, I always keep my insurance companies toll-free. Actually I have an app, so all I have to do is just hit contact, and if my agent's office isn't available, it'll go directly to the claims office. So if there's a catastrophic issue going on in Oregon, that your insurance company may assign someone out from a different state, so you'll be able to get someone. But do not fear, you will get someone. And worst case scenario is if you can't get a hold of anyone, give our office a call, give our advocates a call. We're here to help as well. Sometimes it can take a couple days, maybe a day or two. But what we found too is that if there is a catastrophic disaster, a lot of insurance agents will go out of their way and actually, if they're local agents, if you've been with your insurance agent for a really long time, they'll go out to the actual sites as well and kind of try to help their policyholders kind of navigate through that. So, I think another key point is be a little bit patient. I know that, sometimes it can seem like forever when you've been a victim of a disaster, and especially if you don't have a place to go, or if you don't have any sort of resources, and even down to a toothbrush. There are I know FEMA kind of and the Red Cross, they set up local kind of shelter areas where you can get some resources as well. And so I think part of being prepared and kind of knowing what your community could potentially offer and having a plan as a community is also very helpful.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And there was another question about renters insurance resources. It looks like, Craig, you posted something?
Yeah, DFR has a specific guide to renters insurance, kind of understanding what it covers. We also have a renters insurance shopping tool within that guide, so a way for you to kind of compare different policies to help you make the best decision. That's a fairly new publication from Oregon DFR. And we also have a renters insurance page as well within our home insurance resources. And so there's additional information there.
Oh, that's great.
I'll just make a quick additional little note about renters insurance. That was a big lesson learned from the 2020 and 2021 fires. Folks were not insured. And, come to find out, for as little as, $10, $15, $20 a month, you can get coverage for your personal belongings and have that additional, you know, protection for additional living costs. And so I think, you know, for as little as what, I mean, you spend more on coffee a month, you know, that you would potentially purchase a renter's insurance policy. So making sure that you have those conversations with your agent. And I know most companies, if you have your auto insurance, they'll be able to provide what they call a multiple line, you know, bundling discount. So making sure that you're having those conversations, because what folks would hate to find out is for an additional, you know, few more dollars a month than what they're paying for their auto insurance, they could have had that extra protection. So really just kind of keeping in mind, and that just again goes back to just being prepared as well.
That's really helpful. Thank you, Carla. And a question that I put in the chat, something that we often, questions we hear from folks that we work with is, you know, we know it's not likely to happen or doesn't happen often, but how could someone tell if their agent is perhaps encouraging them to buy coverage that they don't really need? It can be hard to tell, you know, there's so much language in there about what you really need and what you might not need. Is that something that your consumer advocates can help with? Is that a resource available?
Well, if someone is concerned with, you know, being sold a product that may not be suitable for them or may not be, you know, adequate, I mean, you can always give our advocates a call. We wouldn't be able to, again, provide any sort of kind of legal advice, and we probably wouldn't be able to determine whether that, you know, coverage is adequate for you. But we could certainly have a conversation. I mean, if you're feeling like, you know, your agent is being pushy or they're being salesman-y or they're just trying to, you know, sell, you can definitely call us with that concern. There is no law that prohibits, you know, an agent from offering a product to you that you may not feel is suitable or that you may not feel may be adequate for you. And, you know, again, if there are certain coverage you're required to have by law, right? Which is, you know, you're required to have auto insurance, you're required to have health insurance, you're required to have, you know, insurance for your home if you have a lien, if you have a mortgage. So really outside of that, it's going to be based on, you know, your kind of needs analysis. And so, you know, we do recommend that you meet with your insurance agent regularly to kind of have that needs analysis. And I think we talked about that during our presentation. But that's something that is going to be personal to you and to your family. You can always decline coverage if you're being offered something you feel may not be useful to you, or may not be advantage, you know, that may not, you know, be to your advantage. But again, I think if you're concerned about, you know, maybe fraud or scam, or maybe the agent might not be licensed in general, you can always give our office a call for those types of things.
Yeah, and one more quick thing to add there. You can always have someone who works in the construction industry to kind of give you an estimate on what it might cost to rebuild. That might give you an kind of an outside perspective. You can also have an appraisal done on your home to determine the value and kind of match that up against what an insurance agent or company might be recommending.
Oh, that's really helpful. That's a great idea. That's really helpful. Thank you both. And I have, you know, sort of one more question. I will admit I'm guilty, as I assume many of us are, of the normalcy bias, you know, thinking about, oh, I don't need to keep shoes by my bed. The earthquake won't happen in the middle of the night, that kind of thing. And it's not true. We should all be taking steps to be prepared. So this was really, this was a good kick in the pants for me. But I'm curious for, you know, people like me who might be having trouble getting started. What do you think is sort of the one thing that if they've done nothing else, if they can do one important thing in terms of protecting their family and their wallet from a disaster, or maybe even not the one thing, but the first thing, what would you suggest in terms of that?
I'll go first. I think for me, I'm a consumer as well, and I have those, you know, same concerns and thoughts. And so I think for me, after, you know, if you're just getting off this presentation, the next thing I would probably do is pick up the phone and call my insurance agent or company and say, when was the last time I met with you? And if it's been a while, we probably should set up a time to meet. And just kind of really doing that kind of, you know, needs analysis. And as Craig mentioned, you know, an home appraisal might help, but that doesn't, you know, insurance companies have their own way of calculating what your replacement cost would be. And so every couple of years you are allowed there. I think there's been a recent, legislation that passed that would allow the consumer to request a total replacement cost analysis. So you can request that. I believe it's every couple of years. And that would give you the opportunity to kind of go through kind of that questionnaire. There's certain things, that insurance agents will ask, like, square footage, siding, what type of siding, even down to how tall your walls are. And so that kind of, I think for me that, as we mentioned in this presentation throughout, is, insurance is really going to be the biggest tool to help you recover. I mean, unless you're really well off and have all this money in the bank, I think that's going to be your key ticket to making sure that you're back to where you were before. And so for me, I would say call your insurance agent and just kind of follow up and see when the last time it was that you had that kind of analysis. And if it's been a while, set up an appointment.
Thank you, Carla. That's really helpful. And it's so right. And if nothing else, folks, I hope we all take that away from today. Thank you so much to Carla and Craig. We are at time. So, there were resources shared. We'll make sure to send out that PDF for the folks that weren't able to see it. Sorry about that. And thanks to Jason in the chat talking about, how real this is and how important this is. Thank you both, Carla and Craig, for your support of the whole series and for your wonderful information today. If there's nothing else, final thoughts to add, we'll let folks go and have a wonderful weekend. And you can find me doing my home inventory. So hope everyone else is going to do the same this weekend. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.